All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for the exciting, dramatic finale of the Summer of Champions. Today is Champion Wars. We're going to be talking about adoption, but we've got two teams of heroes representing different types of activities associated with gaining adoption. So first, in our red corner, we have Team Marvel, who will be advocating for adoption through the completion of tactical activities. This team includes Trisha Johnson, Mike Hamlin, and John Ryan. Team Marvel, please introduce yourselves and share a little bit about why you think tactical activities are the most important thing to adoption.
Hi, I'm Trish Johnson, and I've been working on the ServiceNow platform for about 7 years now for Becton Dickinson in shared services. And what I have found is that you can build it, they will come, but if they don't know what they're doing, if you are not out there hands-on with all of your users, your adoption, your success will not fly because you have a lot of confusion, you have no engagement, and tactical outdoes strategy every time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Hamlin. I'm a customer enablement manager here at ServiceNow. I absolutely echo Trish's sentiments there. Is that, yeah, you can have a plan all day long, but it's the boots on the ground, it's the tires meet the road, whatever analogy you want to say or metaphor you want to say, is that it's the action that gets things done. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I'm John Ryan. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for CrossFuse, a ServiceNow Gold partner. What I will say is that if you can't handle the tactical, why am I going to let you talk about the strategic? So it's similar to, like, why would I offer you a vice president job if you can't make good on being a director? Why would I advance you to that discussion? So I think tactical is the place where you earn your credibility, and therefore I think it's important.
All right, well then some fighting words, Team Defenders. Over in the blue corner, we have Team Defenders who will be advocating for adoption through strategic initiatives. And this team includes Brian Uhelski, Ryan Koval, and Rob Pickering. Please introduce yourselves, guys, and share a little bit about why you think strategic activities are more important, the most important, to adoption.
Thanks, Trish. My name is Brian Uhelski. I am the regional sales manager for Ikorio, a gold services partner. And, you know, if you don't have the vision to guide, if you don't know where you're trying to shoot for, you're never going to hit your target. You have to have that vision. You have to have that sense of purpose, that sense of where you're going to go. Otherwise, you're just kind of flailing around in the water and never really know how to get there.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Koval. I am the Service Management Office Director for the Washington State Department of Health. And we have a fairly large enterprise service management system here at the department, made up of service owners and process owners across IT, HR, facilities, and risk. And I really believe that strategy defines your long-term goals and how you're planning to achieve them. In other words, you know, your strategy gives you the path you need toward achieving your organization's mission and vision.
Hello, everyone. Rob Pickering. I work in the Chief Innovation Office here at ServiceNow. Prior to joining ServiceNow, I was the head of IT for AAA and a ServiceNow customer. And so I'm very much a believer in the strategic value of having a plan. It allows you to communicate, it allows you to set expectations, and allows you to build the mechanism by which you're going to actually deliver. If you don't have a plan and you're running full steam, you're just going to end up in a wall, and we call that the tactical treadmill.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to introduce all of our heroes today. I am your host and facilitator, Britt Champeau, the Experience and Marketing Manager of Champion Enablement. But let's not spend any more time talking about me. We've got a lot of people. Let's go ahead and get this debate kicked off. So let's go back to Trish. Could you please share some of the tactical practices you were referencing before that you've completed within your organization that have helped you drive that adoption you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it's time for launches, over communication, celebrations of go lives, those are of critical importance. How many, when your bank changes its website on you and you wake up in the morning and you're mad because you have to watch a video in order to do this and you had no idea it was coming. So really over communication that these changes are coming, how they're going to impact them, make them very role focused, and then celebrate the go lives. And not only that, get the boots on the ground after the go lives with surveys, with continuous engagement, in order to be able to find out how the go live went. Engage your users. It's all about them, and it needs to be about them. They're the ones that are doing it every day. When you're out there celebrating too, you are generating more demand for your platform. You are out there showing the product, tactically generating, here it is visually, here's what it can bring for you. Another thing is we have a full self-service training program that goes into all of our launches, all of our catalog items. You get that, and we've established super users for training that work regionally around the world. And most important, with that program comes our own internal champion enablement group. We meet monthly with these super users. You get feedback real time. Topics are of their choosing. They are engaged. They have a voice. It's not just the directors and the VPs and everyone making the decisions. You hear in these meetings tactical pain points that these people are experiencing, how you can improve process, how you can do things, where can you beef up your training sessions. You don't get those in project planning meetings. You don't get those in strategy sessions. These are your users who are going to be your biggest opponents or biggest, voices for the platform. And then finally, a lot of tips and tricks videos. By the time you go through process training, fulfiller training, and everything, you forgot basic training. New users to the platform, forget, how do I right click and what happens? How do I filter lists? How do I do a lot of these things? Or, hey, I forgot there's scheduled reports that I spend an hour and a half in the morning making for my manager, right? So constant tips and tricks. Did you remember this? Hey, did you know? And those are available for everyone in the knowledge base and get published out on our news and communications site that they get on their homepages every day. Get in front of these people tactically.
That was a fantastic response. Now, Brian, I see you shaking your head over there. So sounds like she was pretty successful. What do you think she could have maybe done better if she'd been focusing on this from a strategic perspective?
Well, anybody who knows Trish know that she does know what she's talking about, and she is very good. However, I have to think that simply having a lot of noise and a lot of motion without a goal and an objective is just that. It's not as much, it's more noise. So I think engagement has to have a vision. Because you're trying to achieve results. And to do that effectively, you need to tie those tactics into the business goals. You have the platform for a reason. You brought that in because the business had one or many significant objectives that it wasn't achieving with some of the lesser tools that are out there. And I'll say tools because this is a platform. What we're really trying to do is reinforce some change. And so what we found successful is you have to have a specific program of enablement that not only aligns those goals and objectives to clear tactics that can support that, but then reinforces that along the way. So while I applaud the idea of having the parties and having the ongoing communications, which is crucial, you have to have that initial objective to know where you're trying to get to. Otherwise, you'll never really have a clear roadmap into how to do that and be able to tie that into whether or not you were successful in those objectives in the first place.
That's a great response. You got a thumbs up from Rob, but I actually see Mike over there kind of mean mugging you a little bit. I'm not really sure what that's about. So Mike, maybe you, from a different perspective, as a member of ServiceNow support organization, adoption through performance is probably something that resonates with you. So maybe you can talk to us about, build on this tactical plan that Trish was talking about before for building your solid implementation.
Okay, that's a great question, Britt. Well, strategically, communication plans are important, but tactically, it's even more important to consider the amount of work that needs to occur so that those communication plans match the actual reality on the ground. And that's where you're actually out there working with the customers and understanding what they're looking to do and checking to make sure it's aligning with your communication plan. So the end user interaction needs to match what has been advertised with the communication plan. So if the end users, they go to use a new system that has been promised to them to be an easy to use, fast and simple platform, but everything is the opposite, there's going to be a sour taste left in their mouth, and the adoption is probably going to fall through the floor, right? And it's definitely something that nobody wants on their go live date, and it's definitely not a conversation that you want on your launch party. Okay, so some of the ways to curb potential problems would be to go through and perform load testing to closely match the expected usage on day one and onwards. To have that data ahead of time so that you can see what you're expecting and then also make adjustments ahead. Also plan ahead and have a smaller number of users test for functionality, ensure that it's lining up with that of the end user. Again, this isn't in a plan. This is actually working with the customers from a tactical perspective. And that can mean gathering, success criteria and then actually validating it, or finding out maybe you're not hitting what their success criteria points are. So you can make adjustments before, day one. And then analysis of the data where bottlenecks might occur would also be helpful. And really, in my mind, the key to success for any platform is that it's easy, fast, and simple. So keeping things in mind will help ensure that the end user satisfaction will be met with ease of use. And of course, contingency plans are useful just in case. And I know that's strategic, so I want to identify that, but it's in case if that happens, it's practicing executing those contingency plans that's even more critical. It's good to talk, but action is probably even more important. So does that help answer that question?
I think so, but as I'm looking at Ryan's little box down there in the corner, he's making a lot of fidgety faces there, like he's just on the edge of his seat, ready to respond to that, which makes perfect sense because he's the mastermind behind this service management office that's been able to tackle demand generation and shaping in a way that allows for cohesive organizational strategies. So, what do you take away from that, Ryan? What are your thoughts since you've been able to do this within your organization?
Well, strategy, absolutely. At the Department of Health, we knew early on that we had to have the strategy to build and operationalize a plan to protect our enterprise service management investment across people, process, and technology. So we established that SMO as a means for protecting that investment and really preventing re-implementation every 3 to 5 years. So the roles and responsibilities that we have within our SMO help us prevent processes in our platform from decay and ultimately, impacting our staff here at the agency. So key components of that, or the blueprint, if you will, for how we do this, really, again, came from ServiceNow's system governance framework, which we discovered through the Champion Enablement Center, in which we adapted to fit our needs. The adaptation of that framework has been so successful for us that it is now being used as a tool to really govern how we operate and manage other enterprise systems in our agency. Concepts in the framework, have really taken hold in our agency. Business and IT leaders are now adapting and leveraging that framework from the technical, integration, strategic, and portfolio concepts inside of it to move our enterprise systems forward. So, as we near our 1-year go live anniversary here at the Department of Health, our implementation was quite large with the core ITIL processes and 25 automated request workflows across not only IT but HR, facilities, and risk. And we quickly realized that we needed an orchestrated process of inputs, activities, and outputs to manage prioritized improvements across our agency business partners and stakeholders. So we built a CSI process to do that gathering and processing and analyzing of data, which also covers our improvement types and release schedules. It was those release types and schedules that were built based off of information that we learned through ServiceNow and through the demand management components on the platform. So, to cement all of this and ensure that all of our business partners and stakeholders continue to be sold on the value of all of this, we drafted a service management program roadmap, again, leveraged by adapting the template we found through ServiceNow's Champion Enablement Center. And we initially utilized that roadmap to cement IT service management, but we have now expanded it to drive an enterprise service management discipline. The roadmap states what our enterprise service management program vision and mission is, along with objectives, the core strategies, right, and the top priorities across people, process, technology, and then program governance.
Wow, that was a very succinct and information-packed response that you just gave there that I think we should probably just put that thing on a loop, and we should all be trying to move in that direction. When you get that kind of a response from someone about how important these strategic initiatives are, John, I really don't envy you right now, because I just don't understand how after that response you can possibly suggest that strategy and tactical activities are either of equal importance or that tactical are more important. What do you think? What do you make of all of this?
Well, I think, I'll go back to what Brian said. Brian's right. You got to know where you're going. You got to know what your destination is. I thought that, Trish made a great point. I say this all the time. You have to over communicate. In an organization or even external to the organization, you have to over communicate. You really have to tell somebody something usually 7 or 8 times before they get the message. And you've got to be aware of that. I thought that the point that Mike made about load testing was an excellent point. The problem is that too many IT projects fail. And whether you're talking about any platform out there, these organizations that we're walking into, they have experience with projects that fail. And if you look at your long-term, and they've seen a lot of them, by the way, because they were under-resourced, they didn't have the right people on their team, or they did a poor job of communication, right? So, and there are other reasons too. But the issue is that if you don't win the battle on the tactical front, which I believe in strategy, of course I believe in strategy, but if you don't win the battle on the tactical point, tactical front, what's happening is you're not showing the C-suite and the optics around the project that you can execute. And if you can't execute, there goes your momentum. So whatever the motivation was about, hey, this is where we want to go and we want to go galactic with this platform, all that goes right out the window, because they're looking at the team saying, you can't execute what we gave you, which is a lot like an investor going to a team and saying, I want you in 2 years to have your company at a certain place, and they don't get there. What does the investor say? Well, I'm not investing any more money in this because you can't show me you can execute. So it's the same thing here, is that, yeah, the vision and the strategy is really important, but if you can't execute, that means you probably can't get me to the vision and the strategy, and I'm going to have a problem with that.
That's a really solid response you've given there. And it sounds a little bit like what you're saying is, while you're on the side of the tactical activities, you may be a little bit less, hard. You may be fighting a little bit less on how different that importance level is. So, I know that Rob never backs down from a fight, and I'm sure he's going to come in and he's just going to swing us right back over to his side with Team Defenders telling us strategy is the most important thing. Right, Rob?
You bet. So it's called plan, build, run. It's not called run, build, plan. And the reason it's not set up that way is because you have to have a vision. As the head of IT, my responsibility was to set the vision for the platform. And Brian said it best, you have to have a vision, you have to have a target, you have to know where you're shooting. Otherwise, you're just burning energy, time, resources, etc. So you definitely have to have that vision in order to communicate it, to get everybody rowing the same direction. But I'm going last, and I've heard some really smart people talk about the tactical, talk about the execution phase, and even though you have to have that vision in order to get everybody to row the same direction, you have to have rowers. So I recognize that, and I will concede that point. Execution is important, but you want to make sure that you do it with that program. You do it with the understanding that this is what we're trying to achieve. This is the steps we're going to take in order to achieve that, so that the people that are executing know how they play a part, right? This brings everybody together as a team so that I know where I fit in the team, and I know where other people fit in the team, and we can all work together to drive this forward. I'm kind of getting to the point where, you know, they're the same, right? People have to have the plan. You have to get people rowing. People have to row. You have to execute. Execution is very important. I have long considered myself an executor, but that comes from having good plans and having good visions and understanding where you're going to go and how you're going to move the team together. That's one of the reasons why I love the champion enablement area so much, because there's all of this information about building the plan, running ServiceNow as a program, how you go about that. But there's also this other area of all the tactical pieces, right? Here's the way you communicate. Here are the actions you need to take. Here's the information that you can leverage yourself. So I'm kind of coming around to maybe tactical is important, but maybe it's just not as important as having that true vision going forward.
How interesting. So Rob, what I will say is you're a bit of a uniting force there. I saw Trish and I saw Brian nodding, and we know that there was a lot of heat in that conversation. You know, I saw Mike and Ryan nodding their heads and kind of smiling about what you were saying. And, you know, Ryan was really telling Mike what for when he went. So, and then finally, you know, I mean, John's sitting over there just kind of like, yeah, you know, looked like you guys are on the same team when you're not. So we're actually running really ahead of our schedule. So I'd like to go back through, and I'd like to hear what you think now. I'd like to hear what you think now after you've heard all of this. And I'm seeing you nod at the same things, and I'm seeing you smile at members of the other team when, I mean, I know you guys weren't on this call before, everybody who's watching, but there was some fighting words going on between these groups. They were rough. So I'm going to go ahead and go back through. Trish, I'd like to give you a little bit of vindication following Brian's attempt at a takedown.
No, absolutely. And so you know, I can look at this as doing an effective strategic plan, and as John said, you know, IT projects, and this is ServiceNow. We are outside the world of IT now. We are in the business. We are in, you know, and so, you know, shared services across the board. You have this experience of, you know, plan, build, fail, right? Planned, build, fail, and you don't get to run. And so I see strategic planning failing because strategic planning has a vision, and you have your great, you know, 100,000-foot vision, and that's fantastic, but there's no strategic plan on how to accommodate for the run. So you get to plan, build, fail, plan, build, fail. I look at strategic planning as something that's a very tactical activity. I look at governance as something that is a very tactical activity. I absolutely need my executives and C-levels creating the vision for me, but vision is different than strategic planning. And so that strategic planning must have the tactical components in it. I can put all the vision out there in the world, but as Mike alluded to, if I don't have reality put in there as well, how are you going to manage it? I can say governance all over the place. If I do not have a tactical plan to bring every arm of my 70,000 person organization together to agree on what's more important, I can have all of the vision and strategy in the world. They absolutely go together. There are tactical activities that you could consider strategic, if that's how you're looking at them, but from boots on the ground folks, of your dev team managers, of your organizational change and culture and all of these things, that strategic planning has to plan for and accommodate the strategy to be able to accomplish the tactical.
That's a good response, Trish. Look at Brian's face.
Oh, it's so
Oh,
great.
God, knockouts.
I just, one of the things that I love about these is when I hear somebody come to my side of the table just voluntarily like that, because it's so nice to get that kind of buy-in.
Tactical, strategic planning, tactically, right? That's our side of the table.
So, and I think Trish she had some very good points there. And there's a role in both, right? And it's really a hierarchy, I think, is what we're talking about, because the strategy sets that vision and really provides, enables us to figure out where exactly those tactical steps are going to be most effective. Whether you're a 70,000 person organization like Trish has, or you're a 700 or somewhere in between, change is going to be difficult. And so having that long-term vision allows you as an organization to really identify, where are those impacts going to be, at what point of a project should we look at where it's going to be a stress point? What are some of the things that we can be on the lookout and think ahead for now and plan ahead for? So, you have a change impact. If you identify the change impacts that you're going to see along the way, it makes it much easier to plan for and have an alternative if things don't go 100%. You can also adjust your training and your communications for different types of groups, because everybody is different. Your organization, the more diverse your organization, and as Trish said, you're going across the organization, across the enterprise now, different parts of the organization are going to react differently. So having that strategy allows you to plan ahead for how each different part of the organization will respond and accommodate for that and compensate for some of those things. If that's a key point in making sure that you want to be effective across the board, but know that at any point you might not be. We know projects don't always go 100% according to plan. That's okay if you've planned ahead for that. So having the strategy is wonderful, and it enables you to have the tactical components that are necessary to ensure your success.
It sounds like you guys may have joined the same side, but I don't think it's either of the sides we initially started out with there, Brian. It sounds like people are starting to meet in the middle. And Mike, you're looking very pensive over there in Building B. I'm just wondering if, as you listen to Trish and Brian, if maybe this initial suggestion you made of kind of adoption through performance, and it has to work in order for people to use it, and nothing else matters, is that still the perspective that you're looking at things from?
I'm approaching this more from a philosophical standpoint. Yes. For every hand, there's probably a glove, right? For every yin, there's a yang, right? And you have to have both, and they do complement each other, I realize after this discussion. The reason being is that, going back to Rob's point, is that yes, you need visionaries, or you need a plan, and you need direction. However, if you don't have feedback to change or to adjust that plan from a tactical side, then your strategy could be all wrong. Whether it's agile methodologies when you're working with software, it's never, okay, no matter what, we're going to go from A to Z in this straight line. In software, things change. It's an evolving beast, right? So that's why I suggested that in the very beginning, is that they have the plan, but you actually have the boots on the ground talking with end users before launch to gather that information, because most likely there are going to be adjustments that need to be made to the strategic plan. So in essence, one can't live without the other, and they're both interdependent on each other to be successful on both sides. That's kind of what I'm. And I'm doing the yin and the yang.
I'm being very zen about it.
Yoga. I think I've hit zen after this conversation.
You're very zen about it. So Ryan, I come to you as our strategic guru, as it were, after that philosophical response, to kind of see how you're feeling after the aggressive comments made by previous people who will go unnamed. You know, and kind of Mike's bringing us back to the center. You know, what are you thinking? What's going on in your head?
You know, I'm kind of being reminded here that it's always a good idea to have a map, right? And so when I think about a map, I think about the tactical side, and I can start to see maybe I don't want to call it the dark side, but I can start to see the other things a little bit and how they mesh. And, you know, specifically for us here, we have fulfillers and a release team who, you know, at the end of the day, to get from strategy to tactical, really needed that map to perform their tactical activities around whether it's testing, development, business requirement gathering, communication, you know, all of those activities that produce a successful release. But I will say that, you know, having found that, you know, that clearly defined strategy for managing our enterprise system, it's still an important aspect of transforming and elevating it to support our current and future services. The system governance framework I alluded to earlier, you know, that provides guidance at all levels of our organization to be strategic in how we make use of the ServiceNow platform moving forward. So, you know, being strategic about how we utilize ServiceNow enables us to align the system with our agency's long-term goals and vision. It helps us create a structure to standardize future development of our system, and it enables us to build capacity and increase responsiveness to changing priorities that support better business outcomes and performance. With these strategic components, we can then drive and shape demand for system consumption based on our agency needs, as well as measure and assess value to understand how our enterprise system supports our agency needs in the larger technology business landscape.
That's a very well thought out response, Ryan. And as we're going through to our more moderate crew, I can't really see anybody arguing. I see Rob's face there. He's like, moderate. Just attitudinally. We'll call that a word. I think it might be a word, but we'll call it a word. And all I'm saying is that John and Rob were kind of already in this place of thinking that there might be a symbiosis between these, a finger melding of these tactical and strategic activities. So John, as you were speaking before, you're kind of the first one that hit on this idea that maybe it's not one over the other. Maybe they are almost of equal importance, with you saying tactical is still more important. What do you think now?
Well, first of all, I'm a little disappointed because I thought for sure that Trish and Mike would carry me to an easy victory today. So this is much closer. That I'm sure that their expectations for me were low enough that they're happy with what I did today. But
I had a moment of clarity. I couldn't deny.
I still think it's tactical strategic planning. So
I was looking forward to winning easily, but this is pretty tough. So what I would say is that I think that both are true. They're not mutually exclusive. They're kind of both ends of the same jump rope. So you've got to have both in order to make it all work. And I think that the long-term vision and the planning is of course important. You've got to have that. If you're going to be responsible and accountable, you've got to have a vision for the organization. You've got to have a plan, because you've got to be able to have context to all the tactical things that you're doing. But the tactical things, I think you have to be careful, because you can get your head so up in the clouds with what you're going to look like in 3 years, you forget about you got to win the next 90 days. And so I think just keeping that in balance is the trick to all this. But I still go back to it's very, very important, and I think everyone here agrees with me on this. You've got to show that you can execute. If you can show you can execute, you win the right to pursue that vision.
That's a very thoughtful statement. You've got kind of everyone looking like that's something they're writing down. So I think that's a really fantastic point. And I would say to you, John, that I think we're all winners. If we can come to a dialectic decision here where we work together using the Socratic method to come up with, what's the absolute best response, then we've all won. So with that in mind, Rob, you are last, and we, as I said, we are running very far ahead today. But you're last, and I feel like you were already right there on the edge. And don't let your team pride overwhelm your response. What are your thoughts?
Well, so first I want to thank John for stating that vision and strategy are the most important. I agree with what he said, what Trish has said, what Mike has said. I actually agree with everybody on the panel and their various viewpoints. I want to go back to plan, build, run, right? Because there's a reason we call it that. It's build the plan, and the plan actually comes from having a solid vision of where you want to go. You can't build a plan without having the vision. Once you have a plan, the plan is made up of tactical steps, right? Those are the actions we're going to take to ensure that we execute against the plan and we actually build whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. We know that we're successful because we can look back at the vision and we can actually see this is what we set out to do, and now we've achieved it on the other end. And then you get to run it, right? And we aren't even really talking about the running. We're talking about the planning, the building, and the executing. So everybody has had extremely valid points, and I'm kind of coming back and looking at it and saying, well, I still believe that strategy is important. I don't necessarily think it's more important than the tactical execution. I said before, I'm an executor. It's very important to show that you're moving forward. You're moving the organization forward. You're driving business value in the organization. And so they're both equally important, and I'm now a solid moderate.
Solid moderate. I like that so much. So what I'm taking away from this, now that you all have these happy faces on, instead of your mean mugs you were pointing at each other before, what I'm taking out of this is that we have together decided that you can't have one without the other. That it doesn't matter. And we've had this conversation between this group before, that it doesn't matter how great your plan is if your implementation is poor. It doesn't matter how great your implementation is if you haven't communicated it. It doesn't matter how great your communication is if you haven't solidly planned out how you're going to deliver those communications, right? And so I think what we're coming to as a group is that we have to focus on all of these areas with, not just sending a random email out 5 seconds before we're going to go live and saying, oh, by the way, we're upgrading. We have this new service. You should know about it because you have to use it now. But instead, letting people know, over time, and telling them, as John said before, sometimes you have to tell people over and over and over again in order for them to really hear it. So what we're coming to is, yes, the execution of a communication plan is important, but so is creating that communication plan in a way that's going to address your entire organization, not just your platform team. Is everybody on the same page there? Would we agree with that?
Yep.
As long as it doesn't make Rob right. Just kidding, Rob. No, I totally agree.
So, Britt, I kind of thought maybe with the time remaining, it might be interesting for each of us to argue the opposite.
How interesting. Now that we all agree, let's disagree again. I love that. So let's go ahead and start it over, because Trish, I know that you were saying before that we're just going to call it tactical strategery. What did you call it?
Tactical strategic planning, yes.
There we go. New word, strategery. So I'd like to hear you from the opposite side. I love this suggestion, Rob. Please,
Absolutely.
Trish. Other side.
So other side. So, I've been out there and all these people out in the champion enablement group are creating all these ideas, and they want this field to say this and a new display name, and we've got this catalog item, and I have all of these other things, and I have all this user engagement, and I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what is any going to be of value. what do you do with all that? You will get absolutely overloaded. Does it fit a vision? I don't know. Does someone up there want it? I'm down there, boots on the ground. So without the vision, without your roadmap, without demand management, governance model, how do we decide who goes first? Who gets the best value? I mean, who's the biggest bang for your buck? What is our resources? What's our capacity? You have to have thought out your governance model before you go out and get tactical. If you just go out and get tactical, you will be overwhelmed. This platform sells itself the second you show it to anyone. You have a backlog that goes on for years. What do you do with that backlog? Does it fit your vision? Does it fit your strategy? And really, I think that you need to look at vision and strategy. Strategy is plan, build, run. You have the whole thing. But you need a vision and you need execution. And oftentimes we have a vision, strategic plan, in between the running of it. And so you've got to have that at the top, or else tactical means nothing because you don't know what to do with anything coming in.
So Brian, you look really pleased to hear that perspective from the other side, as it were. I think you still are hoping to win, but just to throw a little wrench in it, I want to hear you talk about this from the tactical perspective, sir.
Sure. Well, and it's funny because as much as I love to agree with Trish, in this case, I would say that the tactical has it plays a tremendous role in this, right? It's the love and marriage, right? They're one into the other. With the tactical, you have to have those things like, if we understand what our change impacts are going to be, now we get into the real meat and potatoes of it, because we can put those pieces together to develop those contingencies that I talked about before. So who are the people that are going to lead internally? There's always these great grand visions that we have at the beginning of a project, and all of a sudden, a little bit into it, we forget that, oh wait, we have all these day jobs, and we find out that it's not quite as easy as we envisioned, because there's multiple things that are happening over time, and you may have people that are wearing multiple hats. So having that ability to pivot and check your team along the way to change tactics when the tactics that you have aren't working needs to be a part of that plan. So how is that, how do we assess that? How do we know along the way that we're staying on track? Who are the folks that are responsible for helping us manage that internally? And what is their role in that governance model that Trish talked about there? There has to be those checkpoints. There has to be escalation paths. There have to be a way to identify when we're not doing what we want to do, and make sure that we have a way to fill the gaps that aren't necessarily being addressed in the way that we'd like to. You always want things to be perfect, but you have to plan for imperfection and make sure that you have a way to address it and move forward. Nobody expects perfection; they just want it. And so I think what it comes down to is having a realistic vision, and then having the best plan that you can to achieve that.
And I'd like to thank Brian for completely agreeing with me now and how important vision and governance and planning is.
So there, you did mention some things that I think are really important in there, and Mike, I'd like you to touch on them a little bit in your responses. You switched sides over to the strategic side, which those were escalation paths, right? You were talking about checkpoints, contingency plans, right? In the case that your plan doesn't go the way that you initially thought it would. These are things that you need to make sure that you're able to execute in the moment. So from your strategic perspective, Mike, could you touch a little bit more on those? Because I think that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, I promise not to get too philosophical, but just to take a step back.
Thank you very much.
Is that people don't just become doctors overnight, right? They have a plan, they have a vision for themselves. Many of the greatest thinkers, they didn't just stumble onto their wonderful ideas, okay? So they generally had a plan or a vision or a feeling of what they wanted to work toward. And then they maybe explored along the way and maybe went in different ways. They adjusted their plan and they achieved it. I think that is a universal kind of metaphor that you could apply to anything, including rolling out software, right? So from a strategic perspective, I would say going through and stating, okay, this is the direction we want to go, and we want to build in evaluations to make sure that our tactical is following through. And if tactical is actually having problems, then where does our strategic plan adjust? So you can just to change a strategy can actually be part of the strategy plan. You have checkpoints along the way. As in terms of adjusting, there are a number of things that you can do, but I think probably I would run out of time on that. But that was kind of my essence on strategy versus contingency. But it's kind of more, again, philosophical, I guess. Does that help?
I'm just questioning how on the strategic side, I'm sorry, on the where you initially assigned on the tactical side, how we can't get your head out of the clouds and back into the instance. We'll work on that. But I did like this conversation, or this topic you were talking about with these contingency plans, and how important it is to be able to adjust. And Ryan, I think you know just as well as anybody how important it is to be able to adjust. When you've got your entire organization engaged in your demand generation, your demand shaping process, can you talk to us about what that looks like in terms of adjusting, but from a tactical perspective?
Yeah, so everybody, it's great to have a plan, right? And I'm a firm believer in strategy, and we set up a steering committee to help us really guide and formulate that strategy with us. And so we came out with this big kind of shock and awe, but there's always someone in the room who says, wow, that's great, but show me how you're going to do it. What does that look like, right? They want to see that the next level, or at least maybe the playbook on the quarterback's arm for what that really means. And so when I think about that, it's always nice to have something in your pocket to pull out when someone asks that question. So whether it's detailed communication plans with a link to an artifact that you can pull up at a moment's notice and say, here's an example of our next quarterly newsletter, and here's the things that we'll be covering. What do you think about that? Can we get your thoughts on is this the right communication vehicle, or is there another piece missing that we need to generate? So you engage people to help you with the tactical day-to-day things. There's a lot of other examples around producing other artifacts and tangible things that people can use, again, on that map to deliver successful, weekly or quarterly releases. It's showing them the outputs from a weekly release and detailing how 5 HR implemented improvements happened, and maybe 3 risk management bug defects were corrected. And so it's really getting down to the details and showing them the value that's being put in as an output of that strategy.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid tactical response you've just given there from a very strategic dude. So thank you for that. And now what's funny is this initial idea about having this conversation about tactical versus strategic adoption plans, how those two kinds of activities affect adoption within your organization actually came from John, a conversation that we were having one-on-one about a month and a half ago. It's been a while, so I'm actually really excited to ask you, John, switching over to the strategic side, go ahead and just throw anything you would like out there to let us know how you feel about strategy for adoption.
Well, I'm going to get a little philosophical on you too.
Oh God.
Oh God. Quote Henry David Thoreau, which is that most men lead lives of quiet desperation, and I think most people lead lives of quiet desperation. I think that we don't think big enough. And when you look at these organizations that are bringing a platform like ServiceNow, these aren't software decisions; these are economic decisions that are being made. And so these economic decisions have to do with where that company wants to get in 3 to 4 years, from a fiscal and financial standpoint, and how ServiceNow is going to help them get there. That's a big idea. And that big idea deserves a vision, because that vision is what's going to keep that C-level board concentrated on getting to that place. They'll go back to the tactical stuff, and they'll go back to the strategic planning to make sure, again, that you can execute. but it's the vision that basically says to the entire organization, this is what we're doing, and we're going to end up in a much better place in 3 years than where we are today. And then that affects every decision along the way because you're staying true to that vision. And that vision makes everybody's life better, because then you go from what used to take me 5 days, takes me a couple of hours. Oh my goodness, now I can do other things that are more valuable to the organization. And that's why the vision matters. And frankly, I wouldn't deploy ServiceNow without a vision.
So concise. You
Thanks
can see how you could see how having that conversation with John from a perspective that we've never really touched on in Champion Enablement, this idea of your plan for success drives adoption. The ability to be able to show not just what you're doing today, but what you're going to be doing in 3 years from now and how that's going to affect people. People buy into your plan just as much as they can buy into what you've actually released as of today. And so I think that's a really important subject for us to be broaching today, which is why we're having this debate. And Rob, I know that from your perspective, you are an uber technical guy who's been in very high levels of leadership. And I know that there's got to be this constant balance that you're doing between, oh, I'll just do it, right, on that tactical side of your brain, and the, okay, but you know what, I want to make sure that my customers I work with, that the organization in general is planning for success. So after hearing that from John, because you spend so much time every day talking to our customers, how do you balance those two things out to get you to a place where an organization can say, I buy into the plan, not just what we're doing today?
Yeah, so we're here because everybody on this panel is a champion, a ServiceNow champion, inside their organizations or out to their customers or inside ServiceNow itself. And in my history, having the plan is terribly important, right? Because as I argued earlier, you're not going to be able to know where you're going, hit that target, execute, and more importantly, drive team together towards a common goal. But you need to be able to execute the steps. And as champions, what I think everybody will agree to is that when people see progress, when they see their idea realized, when they are able to have a positive impact on their business, that drives a sense of ownership. And they now feel a part of this larger solution, this larger idea, right? And they get involved, they get engaged, they want to participate. And that's been the single best thing that I ever did when we were implementing ServiceNow, is to go out to those business partners, show them the vision, show them the results of a strategic plan to bring them on board, but then to engage them and make them a part of that solution, give them the tactical and allow them to participate and see their business change for them. Just as Mike said, for every glove there is a hand, and it is complementary, right? You want to show where you're going, and frankly, if you don't have that plan and you don't have that vision from a standpoint, you're not going to get the funding for an environment as large as ServiceNow. And so that has to be there, but you also want to show the business that you're able to execute it, that you know what you're going to do and how you're going to move forward, and you're going to make them a part of it. They are most definitely one and the same. You need the yin and the yang.
Britt, real quick, I just want to make an observation, and sorry, I think it's important though. We start these conversations out, and all of us on this panel, I think we all agree, both are important. You can't do one without the other. It's very interesting though that we keep using the words vision and strategic plan as two separate things. And I think that is my biggest takeaway even on the panel here is a strategic plan is tactical. Team Marvel, bringing you all to my side at the end here. But having a good strategic plan, having a good governance model, having all of those things that you use Champion Enable for the templates, etc. That's all tactical. Yes, your audiences are different, and executive C-level, that's strategy, but down here, it's more tactical. But all of that is tactical, as opposed to a vision. Because if you don't have that vision from your topmost guy, your strategic plan isn't going to get anywhere. So I just wanted to throw that out there before you conclude. Sorry, that I think vision is different than strategic planning and tactical. And we're all on Team Marvel, and we win. So.
Yeah.
Well,
totally
I'm glad you've made that decision for yourself of your own winning. I love it when people are just like, no, you know what? I win. So my big takeaway from this conversation today, and I always have a lot to take away from this group because there's just so much collective experience and talent and passion in this group. And so what I personally can take away from this is that it's not enough to try and do everything by yourself, even though no one really said that, as we're talking about a vision and we're talking about the highest person in your organization needing to be on your side and helping you to see what is the destination, right? And as you have the people that we were talking about, those boots on the ground, you can't do it without them. Your developers, you can't do it without them. The other people that are helping you with your strategic plan to align with your vision, you can't do it without them. And I think Ryan's organization, with the way that they've built that service management office to encompass all areas that are using the platform, is a perfect example of that. So my big takeaway is champions are only champions if they're championing other people to be engaged in their program as well. So please, if you're watching this group of people comes from a variety of backgrounds. We have 2 customers, we have 2 partners, we have 2 ServiceNow employees plus me, so I guess 3. And all of us have been able to agree on the fact that vision and tactical activities are just as important, because we all win when we work together. So with that, I've had so much fun, guys. I want to really quickly let everybody know what's coming next. Thank you so much. You will probably, viewers at home, you will probably be seeing more from each one of these people. They have a fantastic story to tell, every single one of them. So in the coming months, we're actually going to be doing a ServiceNow Rocks in the theme of Schoolhouse Rock. During which time we will have guest speakers from all around ServiceNow coming from our business units to talk about product. We actually have our very first one with Rob right there next week to talk about CNDB and solving that puzzle. And after that, we're going to start going into the total economic impact of ServiceNow, information you can take back to your executive leadership to help them drive that vision that we can all support within our organizations. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let all of you go. It's been fantastic. I've had such a great time during the Summer of Champions. Champion Wars is over, and we've all come to the same side, though that side is,
Team Marvel,
as I gather, it's still on Marvel. All right, thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your week.
Take care.